Blessings and welcome everyone to our very special CSA Healer Practitioner training. I'm here with the amazing Gloria Masters as we go on this very special healing journey. For quite a few modules, we'll be diving deep into different aspects of child sexual abuse, and that's the name, I guess, if you like, for CSA, but we've chosen, Gloria, just to call it CSA Healer, so it's not such a triggering term. I noticed that you use CSA quite a lot also within your books, and can you tell us what is child sexual abuse? Because there's going to be many layers, many nuances, many deep dives into this whole area, and then we'll be circling back through this course from the perspective of becoming a healer, not just for people who are survivors, but also for supporters, and maybe some other areas we'll touch on as well.
Yeah, and look, thank you. It's such an honour to be part of this and join with you, Carrie Ann. I'm so excited. I think it's going to be really special. And, I think it's a great initial question because, people don't recognise actually what child sexual abuse is. So I want to be really clear. There are so many different types of child sexual abuse, but I think a really good definition just initially, it can be physical sexual abuse where a child is being touched without consent or even understanding what is going on. That involves touching a child's private parts or making a child touch an adult or older person's private parts, genitals. Non-physical sexual abuse. Now, this may surprise you because this is actually abuse that involves exposing a child to sexual content or imaging. It can be conversations using terms that are sexualized. That all constitutes child sexual abuse. And when you think about it, it should.
Absolutely.
Or, even encouraging a child to perform sexual acts on themselves, that's child sexual abuse. Another one is exploitation, and that form of child sexual abuse is one well known to me, that that's where a child is used for the gratification of another, usually adult, for their pleasure. But it's child sexual abuse material that we now call. Now, that is videos, that is still images, that is anything that is taped. That is considered child sexual abuse. And then I guess the final quarter to the quartet is the online child sexual abuse exploitation, which is growing at such a horrendous rate of knots. Yes, that the world is concerned about being able to keep up.
And really, this course is coming, I feel, to the world at a pivotal time when we talk about the online market. It's said to be the highest financial industry on earth at this time. We're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry with the onset of the internet and the dark web, and then being able to transport children around the world. We're talking about the real pandemic on the planet. And of course, I guess for you, Gloria, and for myself as practitioners already, healers, counselors, coaches in this area, we certainly come across these stories all the time. Now, there's a degree, and you so beautifully express that degree of what it could mean to have experienced child sexual abuse, but we're talking all the way to the grotesque levels, and that includes your own story, Gloria, and we'll be talking about our own experiences ourselves as we go through this course so that people certainly can relate to us and understand what we needed to do to dive in to heal ourselves. And for me, Gloria, you're someone who I would say is very much at a mastery level, not just because your surname is Masters. You are the living example to me of someone who's been through the worst of the worst when it comes to child sexual abuse, and yet can sit here today in a state of grace and very centered person. You haven't lost your sense of humour. You still have a very beautiful, mischievous inner child that never went to sleep, I guess, and maybe she had to go into stasis for some time whilst you moved through the first 16 years of your life. but you've certainly done so much inner excavation, perhaps is the word to use, where you've gone in again and again to deal with the layers of programming, abuse, violation, exposure. You know, we're talking the whole gambit. And for anyone doing this course, of course, we will be recommending that they read your book, not just your book of the healing side of it, the flight path to healing, but your personal memoir, your personal story. And so for me, you are that person. You stand like a pillar of light in spite of what was done to you, primarily at the hands of your father, who was the person who not only abused you, but actually would lease you out, your brother, but also obviously all the men and also women that may have been involved in abusing you. You mentioned that child sexual abuse can include being on film, being told to perform perhaps, you know, on yourself or with other children or other adults. So there's just such a wide range of what we're going to cover with this course. But I feel it's very important for the people doing this course to understand who you are. And of course, I'll be talking about my own stories of abuse as we go through the course as well. So thank you, Gloria, for who you are and just your ability to stand in the light and to continually share your story. I observe when you share your story, you do it without being a victim. And I feel that's the essence of our training, to draw anyone who's a survivor out of victim consciousness and into a space where it's okay. No matter what's happened in this earth life, it's okay. And there's a way to rise and to not just be happy, to be absolutely joyous and to have a fruitful life as you are having yourself. So would you like to just, you know, expand on what I've talked about in terms of your own personal journey?
Yes, sure. And thank you. I hope I can live up to these wonderful accolades. No, look, I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful. I didn't feel I would survive what I went through because it was so dark and dangerous for me. To actually have emerged through and be able to do what I'm doing is nothing short of a miracle. And I'm so grateful for that. I think what I try to do with Flight Path to Healing and the wonderful work you and I are developing, Carrie, is it's always to me about hope, because hope is the last thing to die. And so for people who are working with survivors like you, like me, that's the one thing that needs to be held very closely and with grace. If anyone who does this course doesn't come away full of hope or light and possibility, then I would be surprised. The fact is, bad things happen to amazing men and women like what we survived, like who we are. But the thing is, there's always a way to see a situation. And for me, don't get me wrong, I was a victim for decades and I wallowed in it, and rightly so, you would agree. But the realization hit that it wasn't serving me. It was keeping me, attracting more of negative attention or situations. So I realized I would have to go back within and find that light again that could turn hopeless into hopeful, or disaster into possibility. And I learnt to really work with my mind in a very deep and meaningful way. And sometimes what I even now do, which is a little bit naughty, but it's good, is I test myself. I go, okay, well, if I'm meant to be doing that, I want to see some rosellas. Or if I'm meant to be, speaking to that person or taking that type of work, where are the dolphins? So I'm always testing and I'm always getting the response. So that's how finely attuned I've been able to be. So a long-winded answer to your wonderful question is what really helped me through and how I can do this work now so so genuinely and so empathically is because I know it worked. It worked for me. It worked for you, Kerry. It can work for anybody.
Yes, it's the trust that magic is still here
Yeah.
despite what some of these, and I'll call them demons. And I feel like in a course under the banner of My Health, also in tandem with Handing the Shame Back, which is your foundation, we certainly can go more into areas of consciousness, looking at why these certain earth scripts may play themselves out. We'll certainly be going into that throughout this course, because if we don't have a framework to understand yin and yang, light and dark, why the balance of the whole cosmos, what we've come to play out here in a duality sense, the trust in always the omnipotent force of pure source code, God, goddess, whatever people call that energy. If we don't at some point awaken to that, then we may certainly get caught in that downward spiral of being a victim. And as you said, Gloria, and it's very, very important that people know if they feel like a victim, that's okay, because it's a phase of the healing journey. We can sit in that victim consciousness for some time, but we do it so with observation. How is that making me feel every time I announce inwardly that I'm no good? Maybe I've taken on the voice of my abuser who said, you're worthless, you're nothing, you'll never amount to anything. And so we may be starting to use that as a program then in our own mind, sending us back into that victim spiral. For you, again, as I said before, you use the word survivor. That's got an empowering feeling to it. Suddenly we've moved out of the consciousness of the victim, which was okay for the time that we needed to be in that. That may be the time that we really explored what actually did happen to me. All my memories have come back online. The horror, the absolute horror of what happened has to be sat in, felt. This is healing. Healing is not about distracting and pretending, I'm so happy. Affirmations are great. But at the time where we need to just feel the horror, to dive in, to just be with the little child self, the inner child self that was going through it, that had all these strategies to get through it at the time, that we can come back as the adult self and really sit in that space. And also for the likes of you and I as healers, and for the people training here to be healers, that's part of our role, to hold the space, to be with that client who is sitting in that horror, who is feeling that horror again. And so then that may last for some time, and then the survivor energy comes, and it's very empowering. We're
Yeah.
rising out. Yeah.
I love what you're saying, and I just want to reinforce it in a slightly different way. And isn't timing perfect with everything. I did a post on this morning, Kerry, that emotions are tricky things, and research shows us that if we allow them to be and sit with them, they pass very quickly. If we block and stop or distract, as you said, what happens is they don't go anywhere. They actually come back in a different, more aggressive form. And so I think the power is to acknowledge, and for the tutors watching this and doing the course, is to acknowledge what is, wonder what your client is doing when those emotions hit. And if they're distracting, which I was queen at, distracting or ignoring, through either addictive behaviors or self-destructive behaviors, what would happen is my mind would then start throwing up, what are you doing? So I think taking people through that step-by-step process allows a depth of understanding that may not have been available, because the key question, I'd love to know what you think, Kerry, is what is this here to teach me?
Yes. And that's the framework that we require, Gloria, because that immediately puts it into another, well, almost another stratosphere, I would say, because you can really be stuck in a dense frequency if we're roaming around in a certain frequency bandwidth of the victim, there's no hope. And you would understand that people would even at that point take themselves out of the game. You know, suicide is an option for people who just simply can't see the light. And there's no shame in that either. And but if that question drops in, what is this here to teach me? Oh, the crack in the window, the light appears. Okay, maybe I can observe myself from a different space. Maybe I actually am the pure divine consciousness that's having an experience here. As hellish as it is and has been, perhaps there's something that is being shown to me, that there's somehow to take this and turn this pain into a meaning, whether it's for the people, and I dare say, Gloria, that everyone doing this course probably has experienced child sexual abuse. That's why they're drawn to doing this course. Maybe not, but let's sort of assume that most people anyway have had that experience themselves. And so just doing this course, turn the pain into meaning, find a way to understand how these things happen. We'll even go so deep at some point throughout, our modules, that we'll look at the perpetrator consciousness. Why are they doing what they're doing? What went so terribly wrong in their, we can't just say life, we would have to look at it in lifetimes. What went wrong in their consciousness journey that led them to a point where they became so low in frequency and energy that all they could do was take, and to the point where they would take the pure innocence of children, and children had this light in them that is absolute pure innocence. What distortion is operating in the perpetrator that they are so cut off from their divine consciousness that they would take from a child? And so we will be exploring all of these aspects. But something that's always enchanted me, Gloria, about you is, and I feel it's such an important part of what we all need to learn, is that even when the child is going through absolute horror, somehow the way the polarity works here in this earth realm is the light's there. And I'd love you to talk about that, how your angels stayed with you and somehow got you through. And also, if we could explore, I'll let you have the floor for a little while, explore what it means to disassociate and where you can go and why maybe it's often seen as not a good thing, but I would say in this sense, disassociating and being able to travel anywhere, have other experiences whilst the body's going through something is actually very empowering and very important.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting and great. So I'm going to start with dissociation, if okay. And I just want to point out there's several levels to dissociation. And Kerry, shock horror, we all dissociate. You drive from your home to across town for 40 minutes. You will have been dissociated through some of that because your mind is so used to the route or the way or the car doing its job. So just so people don't know, we don't need to demonize. You're not indicating that at all, that word, but just so we know, every one of us dissociates. Someone talks for too long, we're not really there, are we? Yeah. So I'll watch to see if you switch off. No, I'm joking.
I'm glued.
Dissociation will be a survivor's best friend, and we needed that as children, and we needed it because our mind cannot stay in a body where this horror is occurring because several reasons. A, as children, we don't have the cognition. We cannot understand what is happening to us. B, it's horrible. It feels terrible. This person's determined to hurt and ignore what we're going through. So our young minds, thank heavens, are always moving to healing. The light and the healing are what exist within all of us from the time we're born till the time we die. And so our minds protected us by taking us away. As a small child, my dissociation, and it's in the book, and I think you and I have talked about it too, Kerry, is I would end up on a big white-winged horse across the sky, and I would be riding for hours across the sky. And then if I was on Earth anywhere, it'd be in a beautiful big green field full of daisies. But I had a magical time. And that is what helped keep me sane, was I could tap into that. And it just happened because my 16 years was trafficking and abuse. So it was my life. I knew to do it very easily and quickly. Now, for the practitioners watching, so will your survivors. And they'll often use words like, I was up on the ceiling looking down at me, or I can't remember exactly what happened, but I feel like I left my body. So there'll be lots of descriptors, but just know it's all under the term dissociative amnesia or dissociation. We do it to protect ourselves. Second thing about this is, you talk about the light. Now, the light for me, what I learned to do, because I had no living person who cared, frankly. So it was me or me, and so I had to go within. And what I learned from a very young age was I just started noticing around me these tiny little baby angels. And isn't that beautiful that I got that? Because I was only little. So, of course, my little angel friends were only little. Now they're very big, powerful angels. And I love them, and we're all good mates. They give me a hard time, I have to say. They laugh at me now. They prompt me. But the point is, I always had them. So I felt less alone, and I could tell them things. And so the light never went out. Sometimes it felt very dim, and sometimes I just didn't want to be here as a child. And I am aware that for every survivor of child sexual abuse, well, I'm saying every, the stats show us that a survivor of child sexual abuse is 10 times more likely to take their own lives. 10 times. So that's how big and powerful it is. But wait, there's more. The mind, whether you are a child, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, whether you're an older adult, the mind is always taking us to healing and growth. It's always moving to healing. So even in the situations where the client might be coming to you with the same worrying or troubling thoughts, it's their mind is not going to let them rest until they've found a way to navigate an aspect of it. So our mind is always working for us. It's always there. And that's part of the light. And I'm so grateful I found mine.
For me, it's one of the most important aspects of exploring child sexual abuse, to know that the light exists even within the absolute horror, the darkness.
Yes.
For you and your story and what did happen. For me, I still have to, as a long time healer and having had endless clients that have had abuse, even at the hands of father, grandfather, uncle, your story for me is definitely up there with one of the worst that I've heard. And so this is why, again, I need to reiterate for people who are going through this course that if you can be who you are now, there is a way for anyone and everyone to move through their story of abuse, even at the point that they may be just bringing those memories back online. And it can take years, Gloria. These can be, we may have to work with a client for some years if they're at the beginning of their healing journey and the memories are simply just coming back to them. Because what can happen with the memories coming back online is there is a denial aspect. I must be making this up. Yep. And putting it, back into a compartment. The mind's great at not just dissociating, but compartmentalizing, put that over here. But it comes out in our behaviors. It comes out, you mentioned addictions. If there's addictions happening for someone, chances are, they're using that substance to help them put that memory behind a compartment. Let's not explore that. And so there'll be pointers anyway. And we'll get into this as well in our notes that we'll have with our course. So our practitioners in training will really be able to go through and see how this journey looks. And then coming, but I'll let you, I know you want to say something, so I'll let you jump in there about that before we go on.
You know me so well. Look, I think, the mind is always taking us to healing, as we know. That's a truism. And I rest beautifully in that. I love that. I love knowing that. I'm always going to be led to healing, even if I don't welcome what's in front of me. And I think it's important for practitioners to know that. But equally, for people who are struggling with how to manage what they see, my words are stop. There's this law of allowing, and if we got out of our own way, we would find that what is for us will find us. And the crucial point I really wanted to make was this. I really, really feel this very deeply. When it is your time, your mind will reveal. Don't push it. Don't encourage it. Don't seek it. When it is your time, your mind will reveal what you went through. And for some practitioners, I know the pressure can feel, they really want to understand what happened then and what's this and what's that. If the mind is not ready, it's actually it's a contraindication, really, that pushing into a deeper level is important. It's not. We
That's
can only, yeah.
point. So what can we do as a practitioner, as a healer, or coach? People will have different words that they want to sort of sub in there, depending on their clientele and also maybe the broader aspects of the work that they already do.
Yeah.
A coach certainly is a more popular term these days. For us here at My Health, we have a full healers course. So, we are healers here. That's really essentially what we do. But what can our practitioners, healers, coaches, guides, tutors, as you said before, what can they do in order to simply, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of this in other modules, but just in our introduction, in a broad sense, Gloria, what can they do to hold space for a client where they're not probing or pushing past what they sense is a natural barrier because the client just isn't ready at that mental level to go deeper at this point?
I think it's what you mentioned before and what you naturally do, Carrie. It's a few things, but the main one that you've alluded to is hold the space. It's okay to sit with discomfort. In the sitting with the discomfort, you allow that beautiful survivor to feel safe because they're not able to express. But in the next 5 minutes or the next session, they may. They're moving towards something even though you're not hearing words. And there is a medium you can use with this too. Not everything needs to be spoken. Sometimes we can use, art forms. We can do many things to try and elicit what's sitting there. But equally, I get many survivors approach and they want to know what's wrong with me that I can't remember, or I know something and I'm trying really hard to think of it. I'm taking myself back to childhood and it's just not surfacing. And my response is always, it's not your time. How will you know when it's your time? Because the memories will appear.
Yes, and from a practitioner perspective, for those who are listening to us now, it's important that you know that Gloria is also my healer, and Gloria was able to hold space for me in a way. I had brought a memory online of child sexual abuse at age 8, and my consciousness kept looping back to that point as the beginning of my abuse, even though I went on to have different abusers and different distortions within my sexual energy and my experiences. But Gloria was able just to kind of peer into my consciousness in a very beautiful, graceful, and highly intuitive way, where she could see that something had happened prior to age 8. And just gently, she kind of opened the door. And then straight away, my memories did come online. Now, as Gloria said to me, for other people that may take them 6 months because they're not used to kind of just diving in so deeply as I would be, as someone who's done a lot of healing on themselves, but also understands healing. But equally, it can happen that rapidly. With as a practitioner, if you're able to hold the space where you have no urgency, no expectation of an outcome, you're able just to really see your client clearly, pick up on a frequency of the way they've said something, maybe the way their eyes darted around, maybe the way they clenched their jaw, or their demeanor changed, and just gently go in and say, oh, no, I feel like maybe something did happen, maybe around 5 or 6, maybe that age. Is there anything there? Is there anything that comes up? And for me, when you did that for me, Gloria, it just was so rapid fire and it ran through my third eye like a rolling movie. And what was fascinating is that the crux of that abuse, even though I was able to see that I'd been asked to touch a male adult in his genital area, and that was inappropriate, I had witnessed this same adult abusing a younger child that we were family friends with. And so that also is child sexual abuse where and you mentioned that earlier, where you're witnessing it. And so straight away, there's a distortion in your energy field that says, okay, adults aren't what I thought they were. Maybe I can't trust certain adults. Maybe this life isn't what I've been programmed to believe. Maybe I need to start being on my guard. And so all these tensions start within your being, and it takes a long time to resolve that, because as a child, you learn really just have strategies to get through in every moment. And you're not able to process the emotions. And that's what the healing side of this course is about, processing the emotions that were stuck back there, including stuck to the point where the mind shuts the memory down. And many people feel that they're losing it, they're making it up when those memories come back online, and it can be quite shaky terrain those first few months, even years, when the memories come back online. What have your experiences been with that, Gloria, with your own clientele?
Well, what I've noticed, and I love what you're saying because it's really going to be helpful for our wonderful practitioners doing this course, I think, that, you know, what is not always understood is that when we start the recall and the processing of this information, as you see, when they come back online, what tends to happen is we think we're dealing with an adult. We're not. We're dealing with the child within at the age the abuse first began. So where there's an inability to use words, or where there's a fear of finding words, where there's absolute shock or withdrawal or self-soothing behavior apparent, all that is, lovely ones, is it's your survivor in front of you, the age they were.
And so it's really tending to that child,
Yes.
with absolute gentleness,
Yes.
love, honor.
Yes.
I hear you. Something that you often say, Gloria, I believe you.
Yes, that's that T-shirt for the charity, yeah.
I mean, that just gives me goosebumps, because that's a big part of it. There would be children that have disclosed to an adult and were told that you're a dirty child.
Yeah.
Made this up. That happened to my own grandmother. Oh, that child's got the demon in them, sent away to live with an aunt and an uncle.
Yeah.
So this having to reverse, I suppose, all of this. Well, the word that's coming through, it's a form of torture, because if you've had the gumption to be able to even speak it, and then told that there was something wrong with you and you weren't believed, it is a form of torture, because at that point, not only has your body been invaded, potentially, different abuses we said, but let's just say that the body's been invaded, that will always draw the Kundalini energy down through the spine, perhaps, but also for women through the womb space, which is their creative portal. So it's literally an energetic draining of your life force. And this is very important to know because we'll be looking at yoga as we go through this course as well. Why it's important for these perpetrators to have that Kundalini energy, what that does to bolster their frequency up in a very perverted, inverted way, of course, but that draining of your life force. And, you know, I remember, Gloria, as a young woman and having one night stands, and it was the same energy. The next day I would feel empty.
Yes.
And quite, I would go as far as to say suicidal. I've never really wanted to follow through and take my life, but that feeling of what's the point? I don't need to be here. I'll take myself out of the game because your Kundalini has been completely drained. Your life force has been completely drained. So, you know, if that's happened to a child, for them then to gather their energy enough to speak to an adult and then be told there's something wrong with them, you're not believed. It's so important to say, I believe you. I believe you. Unfortunately, Gloria, there are people that will use the story of child sexual abuse to get attention. And so we'll have to look at all these different angles. But today, just for our introduction video, I don't feel we need to go into that too much.
No. And I just want to touch on a couple of things. What you're describing is called the second wound.
Right.
It's re-abuse. It's abuse again. So not only, as you said, does the child need to find all the stamina, energy, courage to find words after being threatened, manipulated or groomed, they're then made to feel like I'm not believed, therefore I must be a really bad person because clearly this happened to me because blah, blah, blah. So it's wounding and it's re-abusive. What you also described, that suicidal ideation. Now, most survivors I know will have thought that, like you're saying, Kerry, which is, I don't want to be here. It's horrible. It's too hard. And I think for those experiences, intimate relationships can be really hard because what happened was our trauma rewired our brain. So instead of just being open to loving and intimate relationships, we're now rewired for protection, not connection. Make sense?
Oh, absolutely makes sense. Yeah. Yes. So, Gloria, we'll start to wrap it up for today, just so people aren't, you know, sitting in front of their screens for too long for each of our sections within the course. And, of course, we'll be going through module by module and having very clear titles for everyone to go through and look at different aspects and different angles of how we can view child sexual abuse. But I feel like what was so wonderful that we really were able to express today is that there is a consciousness journey happening here from a victim to a survivor. And then towards the end of the course, we'll go from survivor into maybe, you know, growing our wings, as you certainly have, you know, returning to that angelic space and even higher, and accepting that even if we can't see it in the moment, there is a purpose to all our experiences in this consciousness journey. And that at some point we will arrive at a place where, whilst it is our story, it does not need to take us down any longer. And in fact, it can be the wings that take us higher. And so we want to empower everyone doing this course as a practitioner, but to empower, for the practitioners to empower your clients, that there is always grace operating, no matter how dark things become. What would you like to say just to close us off for today, Gloria?
Look, I just think it's very powerful, and I think a lot more people are going to be healed through this work. But equally, I want to leave people with this. There is no growth without struggle. There is no surpassing or overcoming without pain, because we would choose not to. So for those that have struggled or see struggle in others, just know they're growing as well. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. Well, it's a pleasure just to be here with you. So excited, Gloria, for our other modules, which we'll be presenting to the beautiful people doing this course, and so much of an adventure. I want to say it's an adventure, even though this adventure certainly is going to include some twists and turns that will make us all feel very uncomfortable. And we want to wrap each other, of course, in divine light, but anyone who is on board with this course, and the ripple effect then out to their clientele and out to their families and friends and out to the greater community, out to the earth plane herself, because this is such important work. When we turn that lead into gold, which is what the course will provide for everyone, then really there's just no stopping this new consciousness that's I see it like a wave coming through onto the planet. And in particular, for each individual person to stand in their absolute power and become that sovereign entity that commands their energy field, this is the frequency that I would like to send out there to beautiful Earth and her inhabitants, and how that can weave from this course out to everyone, that we are the commanders here of our own reality, and we're taking that power. We're taking glory. I want to take Excalibur for all of us, and I want the Excalibur to light up for all of us, because we have that power within us.
Yes.
The sword that's been forged, in the fire.
Yes.
But can become that symbol of pure divine light, and that we can all hold that sword. So I just like for everyone to close their eyes, and I invite you just to pick up your own personal Excalibur. And as you take grip of the handle, see the light as it waves or ripples along the sword, along the shaft. And know that that's your conduit plug-in point, if you like, straight to divine source. So you can send your Excalibur up, the victory of sending Excalibur up, see it in your mind's eye, and connecting to the God, Goddess frequency, the source code, and know that that comes down like a lightning bolt through your sword, through your vessel, and out through your feet and into the core of Mother Earth. And we work together as one to become the ultimate victorious frequency here, whilst having an embodied experience, whilst having the highs and the lows of any lifetime. We can really become that sovereign being. And I can see, Gloria, as I'm going through into this very short visualization, I can see crowns coming down onto our head as well. And the crown in this sense is always about the opening of the crown chakra. It's not about being royal or majestic above anyone else, but it's certainly claiming that you are royal and majestic as a soul, having this physical experience and opening up to all that is. And so we'll just come back, sending love to everyone who's joining us, and sending so much love to you, Gloria, and I can't wait for getting into the nuts and bolts of this course.
Love back at you. Thanks, everyone.